Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first HiveMind Summit. So this is a week-long conference focused around AI productivity, and we will have 8 great speakers who are sharing their experience regarding using AI in their day-to-day activities, overcoming different problems, and dealing with challenges, and how they are using AI in their daily life. So HiveMind Summit is a part of AI Product Hive community. So you can check us out on Slack. And we do have regular community calls that are focused around different projects that our community members are building, different tools they are using, approaches, and that kind of stuff. So if you will like this call, and if you would like to join more of these, feel free to look us up on Google, aiproducthive.com, join our Slack, and the future community call announcements would be there. But just a heads up, the call will be recorded, and please keep yourself muted on Zoom if you don't want to add something to the call. So in general, we are open to any kind of collaboration, but yeah, please keep that in mind. So this is the agenda for our upcoming calls and the conference in general. So today, Parsa and Jorge will share their experience. Tuesday, we'll have Tanvis talk about evaluating RAG systems. And Thiago will present us the meta segment anything model. That's more focused on designers and people who are working with visual content, but should be interesting for other folks as well. On Wednesday, we'll have Anton and Mattia, who will share their experience with Anthropic Console and vibe coding. And on Thursday, we'll have an open mic discussion so that we would be able to share our ideas, thoughts, how we approach different problems and challenges, and kind of semi-formal format. And on Friday, Matt and Sandy would guide us through how you can build containerized platform for enterprise AI orchestration, right? How you can use that and see how that works. And Sandy from IBM, she will tell us about the new framework, BAI. And this is our agenda for today. So our longtime community member and friend Parsa will tell us about how whether it's worth building your own agent framework or when to pick a third-party framework. And also our longtime friend and community member Jorge will guide us through AI stack for rapid product iteration. So please meet Parsa. He's a co-founder and CEO at Iluvatar, lead data scientist, data consultant, and solving difficult problems with outsized impact. Jorge is a co-founder and CEO at Zentric, associate professor at Tech Business School, and he's got 10 years building and development experience of enterprise AI as a director, delivery manager, solution architect, R&D engineering lead, and many other roles. So please welcome our today's speakers. Let's get started. And Parsa, please share your screen. So I'll stop sharing right now. Yeah.
All righty, let's get this going. So can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome. So hi everyone, my name is Parsa. Thank you for the introduction, Max. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you guys so much for organizing this conference. I know it's always a lot more work in the back end than it looks like, so I really appreciate it. Today, I'm going to be talking about building your own agent framework versus when to pick a third-party framework. We'll also be doing a live demo of building your own agent framework because in this day and age, I feel like people talk about AI more than they build AI. So let's flip that a little bit and actually build some AI. Just really quickly about what we do. You can find out more about us at iluvatar.tech. We're building an AI agents platform. So been building agents for about a year and a bit now. We're also doing fundamental AI research. So that's our latest paper. Go check that out if you're into that kind of thing. And we're in private beta right now. So join our waitlist if you want to learn more. Would love to get in touch. But let's move on to the main topic of our discussion, agent frameworks. So you might have seen a list of these sort of like frameworks, like OpenAI's Agent SDK, Google ADK, LangChain. These are very like popular. They make the rounds on social media a lot. And it's probably what you think of first when you say, okay, I want to build an agent. Um, my thesis is going to be you probably shouldn't. So with all advice, take it with a huge grain of salt. There are definitely times where you do want to build off of these frameworks. But what I think is if you're building a product that you actually want to push into the real world, you're better off not using these. Just based off my experience, just based off of how I've seen these products develop over time. But the reality is no one has the answers about how to build an agent. So it's probably best to just think it through and build it yourself. I'm gonna hopefully show you that it's not that difficult. Caveats to this advice are if you're just trying to build up POC, you're just trying to get something up really quickly, you're probably going to throw the code away in like a week or two. Definitely go ahead and just build something quick and dirty with one of these frameworks. Or if the agent that you're building is like a side feature or an addition to the core product that you're building, like, yeah, sure, go ahead and use these frameworks. But if the core of what you're building is an agent, maybe think twice about adopting one of these. And just a little bit more waxing poetic or philosophical, I want to take you through how these frameworks and abstractions have developed through a slightly more mature technical innovation when that is big data analytics. So in like 2006, Hadoop comes out with a framework for dealing with big data analytics. So data that is too big to store on one computer, no matter how big that computer is, right? Called the Hadoop Distributed File System, or HDFS. HDFS was a way to break up your files and your folders across multiple different computers while still pretending like it's all one computer. So all your folders and all your files, like as if they're all on one computer, but they're really broken up into a bunch of different computers. And this, along with the MapReduce programming paradigm, allowed people to, it ushered in the era of big data analytics. And so people used to write, Java code, MapReduce code on top of configured HDFSs to do big data analytics. Fast forward 10 years, you have Apache Spark, which innovates with in-memory data and builds a wrapper or a framework around HDFS. So by the mid 2010s, no one's really doing like HDFS configs, and MapReduce is kind of going out the window, even though this technology is built on HDFS. And then fast forward another 10 years, or roughly 10 years, to today, where very few people who would call themselves analytics engineers are actually going and writing like Scala pipelines for Spark. Definitely people are, but most people who would call themselves analytics engineers are probably writing in more familiar languages like SQL and Python at a very high level of abstraction. But what I'm trying to say is it took 20 years for us to get to this level of abstraction, and you can't just do it in one day. AI in this sort of agentic paradigm has only been around for like maybe a few years, a bit more in the research community, but it's too early to get that sort of like end state polished framework right in such that you can just play around with it quickly. Another example is AWS. Can you imagine if AWS came out in the dot-com bubble? Like, even, we know AWS is a great service. It definitely has legs. It is the future. It was the future 20 years ago. But if they came out with AWS in the 2001, dot-com era, they would not find adoption. What is a cluster? What is Kubernetes? What is object storage? None of these things would make sense to most people. And the point is, you need to have that mental scaffolding developed before you build these frameworks. So enough poetry. Let's talk about agents a little bit. What is an agent first and foremost? I know the background of people coming into this, but we'll do a quick little brief run over. There's sort of like 5 levels of agency based off this picture that I found online, which is a good picture. I don't actually know what the source is, so it's just in my notes. But if anyone knows where this is from, like I would love to cite my sources. But I found that this tracks with basically what I've seen in the real world. But you have your base level of agency, which is like your LLM, simple processor, make a request, get a response. Then you have integrating LLMs into your control flow. So, if LLM makes a certain decision, go down one path, otherwise go down another path. So basically like an if statement controller. And then the third level would be tool calling. So that is your LLM decides what function to call in addition to the parameters to call as well. And then this fourth layer, and this is the layer that I think most cutting edge agents are at, is called the multi-step agent level. That is, the agent runs in a loop until it accomplishes a particular task, deciding what tools to run at every step of the way. I think most of the cool agents that we see that function really well, especially in like the coding and the vibe coding space, are at this level. And the fifth level, which I haven't seen before, but correct me if I'm wrong, is the multi-agent sort of like one agent workflow spawns another one. So this would be something like you close a task and you anticipate the next task with a feedback and or product roadmap development and that kind of stuff in the coding world. I don't think we're there yet. So today we're going to build this fourth level, a multi-step agent framework. So let's build this framework. A little bit more slides before we then get into code. Don't worry. What do we actually need? So like we said, a multi-step agent requires one, tools to actually use to get stuff done. So tools are just the for functions and their arguments. So whatever function that you can call in your normal code base, you would, you would put the name there and you describe it. And you'd also describe the prompts or the function arguments. And that bundle of description is called a tool. So the LLM basically says, I want to use this tool with these parameters. And then you, as the code or the programmer, will go in and you'll execute that function with those parameters, get the result, show the result to the LLM or use it if it's if it's what you need. And then continue in the control loop until the task is done. So you need a main control loop, you need some tools, and you also need some memory to keep track of what you've done so far and the data that you've collected. If nothing else, to keep track of the final result that you're expecting, right? So we're going to build a framework for this in just a moment. And the example we're going to use is a podcast summary. So we're going to build a small little agent that, goes and you ask a question about, some podcast. It'll go and find the latest episode, download it, transcribe it, and then give you the feedback or give you the answer to your question about that podcast. So that's the example we're going to run with. When you're building your agent framework, some decisions to make. And this is based off my experience as well as the experience of some of the people I've been working with. But I've highlighted sort of the decision points in red versus green here. Green being like easier and simpler. And if you can, you should do the green version. The red being slightly more complicated. There's a place for it, but you just have to realize it makes your work more complicated. So streaming versus REST APIs. Hopefully everyone knows what a REST API is. It's sort of like a HTTP port, like as a, you send a request, you get a response, standard API. Streaming APIs similar, but instead of just a response, you get a stream of chunks of responses. So if you ever used ChatGPT, you send a message and it gives you like the response word by word. That's coming in through a streaming response. Streaming is more complicated. It makes your life more difficult. If you can, stay away from it. Really only I've seen it being used for UI purposes. So you want to give more real-time feedback to your user about what the agent is doing. But even then you can fake it. You can like make it a REST, but then on the client side, make it look like it's a streaming framework. But yeah, avoid streaming if you can. It makes parsing the LM responses really difficult. Like, is the chunk that's coming in right now, is it part of the tool name? Is it part of the tool parameters? Is it part of the message you have to show to the user? It's a little complicated. The second thing I would recommend is to do single shot over multi-turn LLM calls. So that's just simply because LLMs are much stronger in the single shot domain. Single shot is you ask a question, you get a response, you go away, right? Multi-turn is you ask a question, get a response, keep asking a question, keep getting a response. So, if you use ChatGPT, that's just like if you talk to the LLM and you keep asking questions, that's a multi-turn conversation. And there's plenty of evidence to show that LLMs are much worse at multi-turn conversations compared to single-shot conversations. Third, memory and state management. So how do you want to actually store the progress of your agent as it's doing its tasks and store the final result? Easiest thing to do, keep track of it manually. So you can have a bunch of variables, keep track of what you want, keep track of if you have it or not. When a tool yields a result, you update your memory, you're good to go. Another thing to do, another equally easy approach is just you putting in the conversation history. Anything that the LLM returns, you just append it to the conversation history and you get a big conversation history, which becomes your memory in effect. Right. So things like Klein or Cursor, a lot of the times that will use that approach. It's good for more open-ended agents who have more flexibility in the tools that they use and have much more variety in the tools that they use, but it comes at the cost of basically forcing you into the multi-turn conversational paradigm. And then I would really recommend staying away from fancier rags or lexical searches as your memory, your core memory framework, at least within the agent loop. You might have tools and functions that use rags within that tool, but for the core loop, you really want to avoid this kind of thing. It's just too hard to debug, and unless you're really a subject matter expert, it's just not worth it. And then finally, where are your tools actually being called? So the LLM will say, I want the, I don't know, download audio tool, right? Is that audio going to get downloaded in the cloud and then, or on your server, and then something happens within the server, or is it going to get downloaded on your client, and your client is going to, on your local computer, and you're going to do something with that? Doesn't matter what you choose. Try to stick to one though. Doing both cloud and client tools gets a little hectic, a little messy. Doesn't matter what you do, but try to pick a lane. Try to design and set your tools and your workflows in such a way that you're either on the cloud or you're on your client and not both. So, um, some random tips as well. Strongly typed languages, best TypeScript, Python with Pydantic, just good practice with vibe coding. Larger prompts, larger models, pretty simple. Things we won't talk about today, but are pretty important nonetheless. Evals and monitoring. Hopefully I can convince you today that building an agent framework is easy and you should do it yourself. Evals are not easy, but you should still do them yourself. Monitoring is easy and you should also do it yourself. I'm going to post a link to this blog, which does a better job than I could probably do in the next 20 minutes or so explaining. And oh, would you look at the time? We are very low on time. So I'm going to pick things up a notch and go through our little demo. So I've posted a public repo. You can follow along with our demo here. Oh yeah, so I posted that and the link to the blog post here, which is equally interesting to read in its own right. I'm sure a lot of you folks have seen this. It was a pretty popular blog when it came out. But yeah, let's go through our demo real quick. We have here is a lot of boilerplate code, so actually ignore most of what's in this repo here. The source is the front end is just a little chat interface, one file big, vibe, an AI built it. Don't worry about it. The really fun stuff is in the server source directory, where we have our agent and our tools, and then our index is just a Express app that exposes this endpoint. So nothing crazy, really just this services folder that we care about right now. So we want to make a podcast tool. How do we do it? First things first, we need tools. So let's build a common interface for all of these tools to get started. Yeah, the links are in the chat. Okay, perfect. Like I said, a tool needs a name, it needs a description, and it needs a set of parameters that are also described. So we're going to define our tool interface in this way, provide an initialization function if it's needed, and an execution function. So once the LLM says, I want to run this tool with these parameters, well, you have to actually execute that tool. So that's what this function is going to be for. And we're also going to put a get metadata function in here as well, so that we get to understand, so we know what the name of the tool is, what it does, and what its parameters are, and what they do. So these are very important. And we can go ahead and sort of build a little roadmap for our podcast summarizer. So we're going to need 3 tools, a feed fetcher. So given a show name, we want to return the RSS feed, episode metadata, and the audio URL, right? Once we have that, we probably want to also have a audio grabber or transcriber tool. So we download the MP3, transcribe it to text, and then finally answer the user's original query with some sort of summarizer or analyst tool, right? And so, for example, we can say, give me a crisp 1-page briefing with chapters, quotes, sentiment on the latest FT News briefing, which is a daily sort of news podcast that comes out on weekdays. So we can throw this guy in here, send the request, and let's let that run for a little bit while I describe the rest of our framework. So we have our tools, we have our base interface for our tools. Now let's go into our agent. Let's go in and actually build the core agent. So we have tools. We want to now build our main loop and our memory modules. So memory, like I said, we chose to just keep track of it manually. So there's a few variables that I know we're going to need throughout this agent's workflow. What is the podcast name? What is the podcast about? maybe a transcript of the latest episode, a audio URL, as well as the final answer to return to the user. So I already know this ahead of time. These are all the things you're probably going to need. So I'm just going to write them down. And then I'm going to define a set of tools that this agent can use. So we just talked about the feed fetcher, the audio grabber, and the summarizer agent. And then I'm going to build this core loop within this run function here. So we're going to limit how many actions that this model can take just for the sake of time and money. These things can just loop on forever and use up all our OpenAI tokens. And then, so this is our core loop right here. While we haven't taken a certain number of actions, we're going to build the prompt that goes into the LLM, right? This is sort of the basic single shot prompt that we're going to give to the LLM and get back. We're going to describe our available tools by, the name, the description, and the parameters. So we're going to stringify the schema, which is from the get parameter schema function. And then we're going to put in the objective. So this is what the user wants to know. This is the current memory. This is the current state of things, just a dictionary that's been stringified. And then as well as the available tools, which we've passed in here. And each of these has a get parameter schema. So, we know exactly this function has these parameters, and that's what each parameter means. So we prompt the model. And so actually, here's a really great example of when you should use a third-party framework. I'm using Light LLM for this completion function. Light LLM just goes out around and says, all these different LLM providers have different interfaces to talk to these LLMs, but they're all doing the same thing. You make a request, you get a response. You make multiple requests, you get multiple responses. And so why not just abstract that away? And I think that's a really great example of using a third-party framework because we all sort of have the mental scaffolding for that. We all know exactly what like an LLM does. Like, it doesn't matter really what's going on under the hood. Make a request, you get a response, right? So we're going to use this framework here. No need to go out and make my own sort of common interface for LLMs. I'm going to go ping the LLM with this prompt, get a response. We tell the LLM to strictly respond with JSON. Maybe like 6 months to a year ago, LLMs were not that good with like tool calling. Like they would respond with they might respond with this, but they might also respond with other text. So like parsing it was a bit difficult. But the newer models especially are just like really good. It's part of their training set. They know like to just respond with, when you say respond only in this format, they will respond only in that format. So you don't have to clean it too much. Maybe like these backticks that sometimes denote code, we should clean up. But basically, we take the raw response basically as it is and parse it, JSON parse it. You can ask for the LLM to respond in XML or JSON, and people play around with that to see like which one works better in their domain. But again, doesn't really matter in my experience at least. So you get a response in JSON. You have a tool name. You have a bunch of parameters that you're going to pass into that tool or that function, and then you're going to go ahead and execute that tool. So you're going to find the tool that it needed. Based on the LLM said, I want to use like the audio grabber tool, for example. So we'll go and we'll select the audio grabber. We'll execute it with, let's say, the show name, the FT news briefing. And then, depending on what tool we use, we're going to go ahead and update this memory. So we know that, let's say, the feed fetcher will return us a title, a description, and the latest episode data, right? So we're going to go in here in our agent, and we're going to say, okay, if it's the feed fetcher, we're going to update our name, our description, and our audio URL. Bob's your uncle. Super, super easy. If we get the summary analyzer, the final tool, right? We know that we finished. We have a final answer. So we're just going to break out of this loop and we're done. So that's it. This is your agent. And if we go and we look at sort of like what's been logged this whole time, right? You'll notice very similar and familiar patterns. So our thing is running just on local. So action 1 on the first loop, on the first turn of that loop. This is our prompt. Our memory is empty. There's a list of available tools. And we tell it to please strictly respond in this format that we defined above. And the LLM comes in response. Would you look at that? Strictly in this format above. So really awesome. We can take the title, the description, the latest episode, parse it out of it. We put it into our memory. And then we go on to the next loop. And so in this next loop, we see that the LLM responds with an audio grabber. So it grabs the audio downloads it, transcribes it. So this is the transcription from today's episode. And then we go here. Now the memory is updated with the transcript as well. So we have the transcript, name of the podcast, the description. And then, the LM determines that it has enough information to go ahead and call the final tool the summarizer analyst tool. So it's going to come up with the final answer. And then now that we have the final answer, our framework is going to back out, send the response to our front end. And would you look at that? Give me a crisp one-page briefing with chapters, quotes, and sentiment on the latest FT news briefing. And there you go. This is the latest, news update from the Financial Times. I'm running out of time, but the keen-eyed of you might be wondering, you promised me an agent framework and you just built a particular agent, not a framework. So, yeah, the keen-eyed of you might have realized that this is just a particular agent. Parsa, you built a podcast summarizer agent. Good for you. This is not a framework. How am I supposed to, make a bunch of other agents with this, right? Well, thankfully, with the magic of vibe coding, I can go into Klein. I use Klein. You can use whatever else. You can use Cursor or Claude Code or even ChatGPT. Just copy these files and paste it into the chat box and say, listen, I want to abstract out my agents file. I just wrote a particular agent, but I want to abstract away the parts of it that are particular to the podcaster. In particular, a user should easily create a new agent by defining the agent's state and memory, what tools it has, the prompt, and how these tool results change the state or memory, right? So our little guy is going to go in, pull out all the things that are specific to our podcaster agent, and magic of code generated without observation. Well, you should review it a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's magic, so you might as well use magic if you can, right? And so now we get these three new files just generated off of this file. So we can go to our generic agent loop. So now this has been generified to take out the podcast specific parts, and to now just take a generic memory type. So we still want to keep track of the number of actions we took. That doesn't change. A generic dictionary of base tools that we're going to pass into our agent. As well as I've added this new thing here called last action for error checking. We'll talk about that in a bit. Don't worry about that. But basically, it's the same thing. You have a main control loop. We keep track of the number of actions that we've taken as long as it's less than the number that we give it. So hard-coded in 5, you can make this return. So yeah, we're going to go through, keep track of the number of actions we've taken. We are also going to pass in a new property called isDone, which lets us know if the memory is in a particular state. So in the previous example, if the final answer is not null, then we'll know that okay, we're done. We can back out of this, and then keep going. So construct our prompt by summarizing our available tools by calling the getParameterSchema function. Build our prompt using this prompt template function that we're going to pass in. So generic. Then we're going to go select our tool to use, and the parameters that we want to pass into that tool. Similar again, just pass in the prompt, get the response, parse the response as JSON. Then we're going to take this parse response with the tool, parameters, find the tool, execute it with those parameters. Then we're going to update the memory with a function that we pass into this as well. So also generic, but we have to define what this function looks like. And then again, ignore last action for just a minute, and that's it. Loop continues. So in the example of our podcaster agent, what would we have to do? So we define the memory just exactly the same as it was before. Nothing's changed here. Tools, just as it was before. Now we pass into our generic agent configurator, the tool specific for our podcast summarizer, our initial memory, which can just be nothing for now. There's nothing in the memory bank. Our prompt template generation function. So this function will take the objective, what the user wants to do, the current memory, current available tools, and the last action. Yeah, don't worry about this, but the rest of this is the same as you saw in the previous example. Update memory function takes the tool name, tool result, and the current memory and returns a new memory. So if it's the feed fetcher, get your podcast name, description, audio URL, we update the memory, return the memory. If it's the audio grabber, we update the transcript, return the transcript, return the memory. If it's the summary analyzer, update the final answer, return the memory. And then finally, how do we know we're done? When the final answer is filled in, basically. So that's it. That's your generic framework. I mean, I made some decisions along the way about like whether I want streaming, what kind of memory I want, bunch of these things, where I want my code to run. But really, like, that's it. I can, wire this up to an endpoint, just like super simple, like, you know, call my agent, run the agent with whatever the objective is that the user has asked for. And yeah, the benefit of this now is if I want to extend this, or if I want to add some new if I want to add some new functionality, it's not difficult because I have the whole frame, like I have the whole mental map of what I need to do. Like a fun example that I like to tell people is if you use the OpenAI agents SDK, it's like not obvious how to not use an OpenAI model. Like you can technically use like Anthropic models, or you can technically use like Gemini models, but it's not obvious how you would. I mean, like you have to go in and read the code, and it's a little bit more difficult, and you don't have a mental map of what's going on. And think about something as easy as like changing the model that you use becomes such a headache, right? And so this was made in half a day. So you can go check out like the commit history on the repo I shared. Like very, very quick, very easy. Just put a little bit of thought in beforehand, build, make the key decisions, play around with it a little bit, and you'll get something that's really, really awesome. Um, I was gonna mention what this what was it? Where did I put it? I was going to mention this last action thing. Basically, we can also keep track of the last action within the prompt as part of the memory, or maybe not part of the memory, uh, just as a way of accounting for failures and errors. So let's say the model fails to make a call or searches the wrong thing, then you can, include the result in the next prompt so that you can, um, you know, so the model knows what it did before, how it led to an error, and then adapt for the next tool call. So that's it basically. So let's see if there's some questions here. Does uppercasing words have salient effects on prompts? Same with if you bold them. Any guidance when doing it? Yeah, basically like any like grammatical or lexical trick in a prompt can have like a good effect on it. The guidance is just like do whatever seems like it would put emphasis, and if it doesn't work, just keep adding more. So uppercase it, and then if it doesn't work, uppercase and bold it. There is one thing to note actually, and this has been shown in a couple different research papers, is that models are particularly sensitive to the first few characters in a prompt. So if there's something you really want to put emphasis on, put it in the beginning, also the very end. So it's worth repeating like the core part of the prompt in the beginning and the end. So yeah. Did you see Maestra AI's agents and workflows? It looks promising and is kind of new. I have not seen their thing. But broadly, my philosophy with these frameworks is like, am I at the place where I know what kind of thing I want to offload to another service? Do I have the mental scaffolding for that? If so, great, use it. If not, it's not worth learning a new framework when you can kind of just, build it. And the reality is no one knows. We're all learning and finding what the conventions and the best case is. So, don't really take anyone's word for it is my best advice. Yeah. Oh yeah, I've heard good things about N8N. Also really great for that kind of workflow. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, if that's all the questions, then it turns out our next speaker has joined. So
Awesome.
we can jump over. But Parsa, thank you very much for taking the time to talk. I don't know if we're all supposed to clap off audio, but just take a virtual clap or jazz hands. And and very happy and thank you very much. That was really informative about building agents. We're looking at how to do that ourselves. So I'll probably be talking to you at some point here soon to chat through some things ourselves.
Thanks,
Uh,
guys.
so
I'll go.
thank you, jazz hands. Okay, so uh, I think Max, do you want
Yeah.
to introduce?
Yeah. So Jorge, we kind of introduced you some time ago at the beginning of the call. Yeah, but yeah, that's not a big deal. So Jorge has been a big friend of our community for a long time. He's a CEO at Zentric, and like a cool fancy slide about him will be at the beginning of the call recording, I guess. So yeah, please take the stage from here, and yeah, please feel free to share your screen.
Thank you, Max. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody, for joining as well. Apologize for missing the first half. We're on client meetings until we started this. So as Max says, I've been collaborating in one way or another with a product Hive for a little while. We discovered each other already nearly a year ago. I think even before we started Centric, a little before. Ever since, we've been working on this insidious problem in the software engineering industry, which is that as development becomes commoditized and we're faster at development, we are creating bigger bottlenecks, particularly on the decision making. And how do we take on those ideas and get them into actually product that users can enjoy, that has some consistency? So because of that, during the last year, we've been deep researching how we can unblock most of these bottlenecks. How can we make actually product managers more useful? How can we make developers help with some of the product management work? How can we make designers aware as well of what are the metrics and things that they need to take into account for their work? So today is not going to be especially technical, but I want you to guide me a little bit on how and where you want to go into a little bit more detail. So for that, as I give that little introduction, and most of you already know me one way or another, some of you even have been early beta testers of Centric and have been giving feedback all our way to production. So without further ado, I want to hear a little bit about you. Feel free to do it on the chats. Feel free to do it on the QR code that you see there, because I want to understand what are the GenAI tools that you've used the most. I want to relate back to them when we talk about certain things later on the stack. And I will have one more question for you after, which will be which tools do you want to go deeper on? And we'll save a good maybe 5 to 7 minutes to just look at those. For your knowledge, I have been basically forced to test every Vibe coding tool on the market. And so if you want to know a little bit more about one of them that we can test live, I'll be super happy to either use one of the browser-based or IDE, although those ones may take a little bit to load. We'll come back to this slide as more people type, but to let you know that you don't have to be a developer to get used to this, and neither do you have to be a product manager. The idea here is that you understand what are the suggestions that I will give to a team that is implementing AI, not just in one role, but how to put it together, how to make their team be the most efficient, how to rethink their product development life cycle. And so, again, please let me know what you used today, if you have any other input. If not, feel free to just stick around and talk about it after. So we're going to see 3 quick opportunities about the tooling, what are the basic things that you can use, and how you can start using them better to get the most out of what is already out there. We're going to be focusing on Claude and V0, but mostly is things that you will apply to all of these tools that you're going to be using. The super individual contributor, this is when you not only are able to do the basic things with AI, but can also go beyond your normal role responsibilities in order to close a complete loop. And that is when you can actually be a whole builder, not just decide on what to build and actually put a prototype together, but even learn from the prototype and be able to iterate. Finally, how do you learn from all of this and bring it into the team? So how do you take those efficiency gains and you actually make them team gains rather than just using individual? So let's take a look at the tooling. And before we do, let's see if there's been much more responses. Well, not that much. Cloud Code is the biggest winner in the last couple of months. The other ones are pretty obvious for the majority of people working here, but thank you for them. On tooling, just to clarify, when we're talking about an AI-powered PM, we're not talking necessarily about one that is actually developing models or building specific features that use AI, but rather one that uses AI on its normal product management work. That is the super individual contributor. What you need to know at that first level for tooling is what is available, how it will impact your existing work, and get that experience working. This is the most easy level. Most of you that are already interested in being here would have already covered most of this. And you would know this because as a product manager, you're spending way too much time on tasks that you know are automatable because they're task-centric, but they do not need your human connection. Because of that, we want to start automating those that have the least value add because of our work. Those are usually documentation, management of context between tools, the administrative work, and those status updates that come after work has been done. We have a complete tool map in front of us. Now, from the first time that I did this slide some months ago to today, there's been a few additions, and also 2 of these companies have just recently been acquired. Base44 only this week or this weekend, and Windsurf couple weeks ago by OpenAI. And this market is probably gonna consolidate quite a bit more in the coming months. We have been testing all of this, so if any of you want to ask a little bit more about either any of these tools in any side of the scope, please just ask. So how are we dividing this? There are tools that are useful for everybody, even if you don't want to get into a little bit of prototyping or coding. These tools, most of them will be familiar to all of you. The only ones that you may have not tried and that I will recommend is specifically trying Grok Reddit answers for what you may have used already, Perplexity. So Grok has been already morphed a little bit, but the good thing about these two is that they have direct answers to a new and a specific source of knowledge, and that is Twitter for Grok and Reddit for Reddit answers. Why are these two specifically interesting for any product people? Well, because they have more direct access to what people actually say. LinkedIn, for example, is not a good example of how people work because people always talk about idealized versions of their work, whilst Reddit is where people actually go to complain about the problems and the friction that they have on their job. Once you have a specific idea, you will want to go and test initially there before you even start talking to users. Finally, I extremely recommend starting to use note-taker apps because it's not only about having the insights that you get from a summary, but that you can actually get that information and in bulk analyze it to extract from customer discovery calls, feedback requests. From internal status meetings, you can draw a complete history of analytics and updates. From meetings with the team, you can actually draw a status track where people have the most concerns on scoping or on planning, things that can help you prepare for your next planning session. On the product side, and yes, very quickly, because I know that we started a little late, these are organized roughly into 3 categories. The ones that are browser-based, and these are the top 8. So you will go into a browser page, you will open the site, and you will be able to just code in natural language, and you will, for the most part, not even be shown the code. You can generally access it and edit it, but it is not the purpose of these tools. Cursor and Windsurf are the 2 of the IDE base. So they have a code editor like engineers are used to, and this is more similar to what we were seeing as well in the previous call. The form that this takes is just what any normal IDE would, but with a new section. In this new section, you have different ways to interact with those AI models, and we're seeing some of them, and you have specific ways to customize their behavior. So just like, for example, in Bolt and B0, you only have like some custom instructions that you can add for a project or for all of your work. In Cursor, you have something that is called the Cursor rules. For that, you will be able to customize the behavior for specific patterns. So let's say that your components will have a specific styling, design, layout, structure. And similarly, you will be able to add something that is called MCP, the Model Context Protocol, which is a way to help models utilize external tools or internal tools. We will not get into this today. This will be the subject of other times. But the main thing with that is that you can get to a different level of precision on how you work. And you will start to see this as a pattern that will make it more useful for a complete team. And finally, there are those that are CLI-based, command line interface-based, so that you are working mostly in your normal environment, and this is mostly for engineers, and you will be able to ask on the terminal, Gemini or Either, or a client, whichever it is, to help you with something. And Cloud Code right now enters in this one. Finally, one that I really like, that I discovered not that long ago, is Magic Patterns. Magic Patterns is a similar tool to most of the other Vibe coding tools, but with the additional benefit that it is more built for product managers. So you can do certain things with it, like attach feedback collection with just a couple of buttons, protect your demo with a password so that not everybody can just log into the preview meeting. And it has canvases. So if you are working on a set of features, you can just organize them all together in one same canvas. So a lot of us product folks are very used to Miro boards and things like that. This is a way to generate multiple options, and each of these are basically the same prompt, but using different component libraries, so that I could get different samples of the UI components that I want to use for some of the AI elements that we're introducing in one of the chat interfaces that's centric. So we're going at a very, very high speed. I am just gonna share a little bit more. And if you would like to know a little bit more in the last 5 minutes about a new tool or one that you haven't been able to touch yet, please add it here. I'll leave just a few seconds this on the page whilst I answer Fekoni, which, by the way, we can follow the conversation in the AI Product Hive Slack. So if you have questions about some of the logos, want to follow up on some of them, feel free to ask. I know that this is very short time for a very, very thick topic. So please continue to add in here whatever we cannot get over in the next 10 minutes. We will cover over Slack. Another reason for those of you that are not in the Slack community to come and join us. For the other logos, Fekoni, nonetheless, this is Tempo, Hypos, B0, Replit, Polymet, Base 44, Bolt, Lovable Cursor, Windsurf, Klein Either, and Magic Patterns for the recording. Now, on the right is tools that will help us with other parts of actually doing product and not just coding. With tools like Dovetail, Wisen, and Synthetic Users, what we're doing is attacking the discovery part, understanding better our users. Synthetic Users allows you to generate alternative versions of a type of user that you can then ask questions or run reports for. So imagine that you are validating relevancy of a feature for a set of population of users. Then you can create those there and be able to run for a sample of what will be their priority. Wiser helps you do interviews in bulk using AI interviewers that adapt to how the users answer questions and your specific objectives to actually talk with them for you. We can answer, oh, really? Thank you for that, Veronica. I can see now much more answers. But for anybody that has a specific note as well that is not here, feel free to add it on the comments. I do see that Magic Patterns is the winner, so I'll probably go to that one and flash a little bit of the other ones. I'll come back to this one, but thank you very much for the answers. Now, we know that this is helping a lot in the product development lifecycle. You will need to understand how you want to implement AI in your flow. There will be areas that you will want to keep as humanly possible, but some others that you actually want to outsource as much as possible. This is my general suggestion for where do I think that you, as an AI-minded individual contributor, fit in. Specifically, this is a map of how the work used to be, and I believe that we can, in the blue highlighted ones, augment heavily by focusing on those stories, processes, the coordination of teams, and alignment to help the human actually do the work. But more than anything, I think that we can automate most of the documentation and entity creation. And I don't want to see in a very near future, product managers writing the acceptance criteria, writing complete PRDs, writing the breakdown of tasks, not even engineering managers. It doesn't matter who it is a loss of time. So finally, and because we have 10 minutes as well, we'll sprint a little bit through this, but how to make this into a full team experience. We want to have a dynamic context assets that somebody is in charge of managing. So it's not only the soft assets of product description, understanding your objectives and translating them into a good little markdown file that everybody can use when they're talking to different models, but a good report of all of your functionality and your user flows in the same format. And similarly, what are the personas that you're serving? If you want to go a level deeper, you can actually create these assets in a central repository. Just think of it as a GitHub repo that only has context, where you and your team are managing the important aspects of the product, where you have a common file summarizing everything that you do and why you do it in terms of the values that you're providing to users. This will be very useful when you're prototyping new features into helping the AI not just hallucinate in a completely wrong direction. Similarly, if you have a product ops team of your company is thinking of creating one, this is the perfect responsibility for them, in addition to everything they do, but to collaborate with engineering and product so they get a cohesive set of context assets. Now, this is generally the stack that I recommend. Maybe today, because of the acquisition, I may actually put magic patterns as the best prototyping tool. And we'll just look at it now with a little bit more detail. The flow that I recommend teams actually go through is that you use those tools for research, in addition to the indispensable user conversations, use-centric, of course, to give those a little bit more reason, put them into a clear implementation plan. Then from there, go into a prototype that you add analytics to, put a feedback form, maybe if you used magic patterns, ship that to people, gather information, and iterate. And that is really all that it takes to, in the end, build a good product. If you have never started, start with something easy. This QR will take you to V0 just to start with a little prompt. And I recommend starting with something fun that you will not drop before you get to production. Finally, a couple of tips. You can use a lot of these libraries are pre-trained. Cloud is especially trained to understand SATCN, apparently, and most of these tools already come preloaded with SATCN. V0 in particular hired the developer behind SATCN and basically now owns it. All of the other ones will use it as a base. So if you ever want inspiration, just go to SATCN page, understand what components it has available. Similarly, most charts that you will see on these pages are using recharts or SATCN charts, which are a layer on top of recharts. And with icons, you have Lucid as the most common. So know that this is what is the underlying libraries powering most of these Vibe coding tools. Finally, even if you cannot do everything on one app, the idea is that you move between apps. So maybe you start with a prototype in V0 or Bolt, then you sync it to GitHub, and then you pull from GitHub into your local, basically, to continue developing with Cursor. That is also how you can do it over an existing code base. And know that when you're prototyping, you don't want to work with real data until you get to the end. You will want to have the functionality ready before you start to involucrate, before you bring in external systems and other possibilities for failure. With that, I am gonna skip through a lot of these that we have already kind of hinted at. The important thing here is this, that you understand and bring this to your team, that this is not just a change of toolings that we're going to be using. This is a change of how fast we iterate. This is a change of how many signals are we looking at before we take any decision. Because now you can actually take action with much less risk, with much more risk, because we can go ahead and backwards as many times as we need to. It is going to be much faster for you to get something out of the market, get feedback, and iterate than wait 3 months in a waterfall-like flow before you can get something out in front of users. The most important thing is iterate and have alternatives. Start to incorporate, if you haven't already, a good amount of feature flags and bring this data back to you so that every time that you're entering into this flow and coming out of it, you're working on it as an experiment. You are defining what you're trying to achieve, and in the end, you are evaluating data to validate or not your hypothesis. Now, finally, and because what's promised is owed, in order, what I would generally do is if I'm working on a new idea and I have some indications maybe of what users want, I will start going over those questions to Reddit, Grok, Perplexity, and all of these other sources. Now, why I like it is because it has direct sourcing of Reddit threads that could be as young as an hour ago. So if you don't have it yet, it's still in beta, so not everybody has it, but you may have just not checked it out. It has not been widely shared. So you can just go to Reddit and try it out. For Perplexity, everybody knows it, so it's more or less the same flow. I also usually aggregate the reports from multiple sources. I have another model, maybe Gemini, because we have infinite usage, and summarize the findings of all of the reports. And then I usually go into Magic Patterns or another tool to write for me that first sample. So because Magic Patterns was the winner, I will show a few of the things that I really like about Magic Patterns. First, you're not limited to SATCM. You have a few base presets and you can bring your own. I have already created my centric preset, but you can create your specific one by creating your own components, your own designs, and it will use those in building the next ones. And this is quite useful for a vibe coding tool for PMs, and they particularly don't sell them as such. Yeah, not Bootstrap. I think this company was created this year, not in '95. I'm joking. But some of these are pretty useful. There are just other versions, and no material UI also. But they are very nice features when you have been using a lot of these tools for a while. You realize how much you need them. Similarly, although you don't have a choice of model, you are only choosing between fast and slow, which consumes your credits differently. It works by credits, like most of them now, and it has very good team collaboration tools. You can specifically say to use components, and the other things that I like, I've already said in some way. You can organize your designs in different ways. You can have canvases, you can have groups of different prototypes that go into one same project, and once you're in a given project, you have the typical bells and whistles. You can export to either Figma or GitHub. It has dark mode a little bit more embedded than others, but that's just a little thing. And you can fork, which is always a thing that I find is a must-have. B0 does it very well, probably the best. Replit does it Bolt does it one of the worst, because the only thing that you can do is copy a conversation, and some others don't even have it. And the share that I mentioned already, so that you can put a password on it and collect feedback. Now, because we didn't really get to show Centric, and it was the third one, Centric is, of course, the connecting tissue for a lot of these items that we've been seeing. In here, you would define what you would want to work, similarly with just a PRD or one single phrase, and it will generate the assets that you will need as a product manager. Among them, even prototypes, or you can even use Centric, and this is one of the most popular use cases to generate the prompts, the prototype specs that you will use in these other vibe coding tools. So if you're interested, you can get started with any of these tools. They all have some degree of a free tier. Of course, if you want to learn more about Centric, I'm always super happy to talk about my baby. And other than that, and right on cue and time, I'm gonna go to the end and a little bit of a Q&A. In this slide, I will actually stay, just in case we have a little bit of time. We can go a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Apologies for having gone a little bit faster, but I hope that a lot of these rings and starts your curiosity in new areas that you haven't played with before. If you were expecting a little bit more of a technical deep dive, ring me up, because we can go a lot deeper. And if you have some specific questions or ads, please feel free to either bring them on Slack or right now, right here.
Yeah, I guess we've got a couple more minutes for the QA. And thank you very much, Jorge, for a great talk, as always. We've got one more slide to wrap things up. So yeah, I guess after the QA, I'll share the screen.
Sounds good. Anybody? So Ahmad had which Vive coding tool is best suited for building extensions or integrations with third-party platforms such as Chrome or Airtable, considering it to follow the specific guidelines and documentation. Those are actually relatively different. With Chrome, you can do really in any of them because it's just gonna be very standard code. The problem is that you're gonna need to just give it the context. Load the right information from the updated Chrome guidelines, from the dated Airtable guidelines, from the dated documentation, because it's not going to have particularly the Airtable documentation. And I would actually say that the most useful right now for something like that is going to be Cloud Code or Cursor. Cursor, particularly if you're not super familiar with code, just because it is the most flexible. All of these other tools that we have seen have a preset stack, and they're usually built for web apps, not for some other either mobile apps or other marketplace apps, right? So it's not going to take you all the way there. So you're going to need to use something like Cursor or go a level deeper and go into Cloud Code Client, something like that. Rookies in coding, like the one that I really used to like the most, and this is very honest perspective, is V0. I really liked V0, but they updated their pricing and credit model so widely on the last month that I actually consider that I cannot use it in the same way that I used to anymore. And because of that, it has gone down in my list. V0, I still think, may have some of the highest message to good output quality ratio. But right now, the one that I use the most is Magic Patterns, because it is the one that I get the most usable output to share with my team. It gets very good output. It gives you the flexibility of using different libraries and prompts and components. And to leave it clear, I'm not sponsored. I'm just a happy customer. And their CEO is super friendly. So it's another plus. If you read a little bit more on them, they seem at least like very amazing people. Good, cool balloons. Well, I think that's oh, sorry, Cloud Code to stop using things when generating code and troubleshooting. Well, this is particularly true for Sonnet 4. So if you go like to older models, particularly 3.5, it was way more conservative. But right now, it does seem like 4 is over eager. So my main fix really has been changing the custom instructions to limit the scope. Basically telling it to always start with a scope definition and always adhere to that scope definition. This type of prompt guidelines usually helps. I've also tested with a little MCP setup that was very popular for a while as well on Reddit, which was the sequential thinking MCP. Basically, is just a set of instructions to help it think step by step, but constrain its thinking a little bit. I recommend you check that one if the first solution doesn't work. But first, definitely try with try not to start with a definition of the scope that you're going to work on and then adhere to it, helping him not go off track. Alternatively, something that we don't like to do because sometimes it charges more, but it's better is having one message to not do code, just give me the plan and tell me exactly where you're going to implement in pseudocode, and then another message for now implemented. And that usually helps on adhering to what the model itself has defined. A good question, Joseph. It's something that we all struggle with even today. And Fekoni, yeah, we can follow up on the logos, of course, and with links and stuff. We have a table somewhere else, and we can probably find a few others that we haven't just been able to fit.
Yeah, thank you very much,
Perfect.
Jorge. Extremely packed presentation as always. So yeah, I was not expecting anything else from you, honestly. So yeah, if you can
Thank you so
stop
much,
sharing
Max.
your screen, that would be cool.
Will do.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, one last slide for us for today. So yeah, thank you very much for joining our today's call. Been extremely great to see all of you, and especially thank you to our great speakers and longtime community members. We are honored to have you on our conference. So please bear in mind that we are a part of like a big Slack community for product people who are interested in AI called aiproducthive.com. So if you want to check us out and proceed chatting with our speakers, you can jump into our Slack community. Thank you for joining, and we are waiting for you tomorrow at this exact time using this exact Zoom link that you can find in your calendar event. And tomorrow we will talk about two extremely important topics, because RAG systems are everywhere, and every time you hear something from your boss like, hey, can we incorporate AI into something like our own stuff, that 100% means that they want a RAG system that will store your data and process it. So tomorrow we will talk about how to evaluate a RAG system for your use cases. And Thiago, that would be the talk by Tanvi, and Thiago will tell us about Meta's new segment anything model that may overcome your expectations regarding visual stuff. So yeah, thank you very much, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Bye-bye.